Let me throw you into a scenario. Think of your dream job. For years you work relentlessly at a lower level trying to work yourself all the way up to this dream job of yours. Your years of hard work that only you will ever appreciate finally pay off when you finally get the call and the job offer you've been waiting for. Everything seems fine. You feel as if you're being recognized for all your hard work and all the skills you obtained along the way. And then one day, without reason or warning, you're fired. All those years where you worked harder than anyone will ever know suddenly feel worthless. What do? Do you give up and move on to something completely different? Or do you pick yourself back up, bet on yourself, and join a competitor company in a bid to prove to what you thought was your dream job that they just made the biggest mistake of their lives? This is exactly the situation that AEW rising star Swerve Strickland found himself in when he was let go by WWE in 2021 as a part of the company's annual round of budget cuts. Despite seemingly having all the talent and charisma in the world, WWE was more than happy to part ways with Strickland, who wasn't even close to hitting his prime yet. But as I've said before in other videos, WWE's loss was the rest of the wrestling world's gain. Instead of moping around and calling it a day, Swerve Strickland decided to bet on himself by joining All Elite Wrestling in early 2022. And since then, his meteoric rise with the promotion has led many to believe that he could potentially go down as one of the best signings the company has ever made. With a vibe and a presence unlike any other, Swerve sits comfortably today at the top of the AEW heel mountain alongside juggernauts such as Christian Cage and Jay White. And all he had to do was be himself, turned up to 1,000. It's finally time we talk about the one and only mogul of professional wrestling, Swerve Strickland. Before even signing with WWE, Swerve was putting in the work across various wrestling promotions around the world. Versatile in the ring and oozing charisma earned him spots as a mainstay in promotions such as Evolve, CZW, and perhaps more famously, Lucha Underground, where he wrestled under the name Killshot. Personally, Lucha Underground was the first time I ever saw Swerve wrestle. His matches against Son of Havoc and AR Fox in particular made me remember the name that was Killshot. In his time on the independent scene, Swerve would wrestle the likes of Ricochet, Matt Riddle, and Roosh. Quickly becoming a standout on the indie scene, it was only a matter of time before WWE came calling, and in April 2019, they did exactly that. Swerve would sign with WWE and compete under the name Isaiah Swerve Scott. Contrary to popular belief, it appeared that WWE had big plans for Swerve early on. He was featured quite often and wrestled against the likes of Santos Escobar and Bronson Reed. It wasn't until mid-2021, however, that Swerve was put in a spot that WWE felt would see him prosper. Alongside Top Dollar, Ashante Adonis, and B-Fab, Swerve formed the stable Hit Row. By sheer talent and presence, Swerve put the group on his back and did the most with what he'd had. It's important to note that by this point, Swerve was a much different character compared to when he made his WWE debut. In a 2022 interview, Swerve revealed that the persona change was all his idea and him simply running with the amount of freedom he got in NXT. Swerve would also state in the same interview that despite Triple H having the reputation of being more like a friend to talent back in the NXT days, he never felt that way about his relationship with him. He would state that the relationship that he and Triple H had was very much your standard boss and employee one. Considering what happens next in this story, this is an important bit of context I thought I'd add. As a part of Hit Row, Swerve would win his first and only title in WWE when he defeated Bronson Reed to become NXT North American Champion. While champion, the entirety of Hit Row would be drafted to SmackDown, and Swerve would soon thereafter drop the North American title, ending his reign at 105 days. It seemed as if Swerve was in for something special in WWE now that he had been promoted to the main roster. But after having only wrestled one match on the brand, a tag match with Top Dollar, Swerve was unexpectedly released from his WWE contract alongside stablemates Top Dollar and Adonis. Just like that, a promising young star let go by the company that claims they create stars. All that investment for nothing. This could have been the heartbreaking end to this story, but the good news for us is that this only turned out to be the beginning. Holding his head high and looking to continue to forge his own path, Swerve jumped back into action across various promotions once his 90-day no-compete was up. He wasn't going to let WWE's short-sightedness affect his future. Having your return match post-WWE being against Jay White is a way to make a statement. From New Japan Strong to Progress to Defy, Swerve was once again putting in the work just as he did before and even throughout his WWE career. But perhaps the most important moment came at Revolution 2022 when AEW announced that Swerve Strickland had signed with the promotion on a multi-year deal. Immediately from the get-go, you could tell AEW saw something in Swerve just by the way they announced his signing. And almost instantly, Swerve was introduced to the AEW audience in matches against the likes of Tony Nese and Ricky Starks. According to the man himself, the biggest difference between Swerve in AEW and Swerve in WWE was the creative freedom. In AEW, Swerve was making his entrance to one of his own songs, wrestling the way he wanted and playing a persona that he wanted too. As I've said time and time again, for better or for worse, AEW provides a sink or swim environment. The truly creative and innovative see themselves come out on top. Swerve brought with him an aura that couldn't be replicated by anyone else on the AEW roster. For lack of a better term, the man just oozes cool, which is something that not many wrestlers have these days, frankly. His flashy gear and superstar walk to the ring just pulls you in. With all that being said, Swerve did come in at a time in AEW where live TV time was limited, and the roster was more stacked than ever. One thing that Tony Khan is really good at is making odd pairings that end up working in the long run, the Acclaimed being perhaps the greatest example. Because the roster was so stacked, AEW decided to take two of the big signings they made in early 22 and pair them up. The result was Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland forming Swerve in Our Glory. It took a few matches for the tag team to truly get going, but once they did, they quickly became a standout in a tag division that desperately needed new blood. The more Swerve in Our Glory began to win, the closer they got to a tag team title match. They got their first shot at the tag titles on pay-per-view at Double or Nothing in a losing effort. It wouldn't take long for them to get another shot, however, as 2 months later, they'd face Team Taz and the Young Bucks in a three-way tag where Swerve in Our Glory got the shock win to become tag team champions. Within 4 months of signing, Swerve had won gold in AEW. Again, a sign that AEW saw the star in Swerve ready to break out. I think we all knew that the Swerve in Our Glory run would eventually lead to a split between the two, but we got some classics along the way. Swerve in Our Glory versus the Acclaimed at All Out 2022 in particular is still my personal match of the night from a show that will forever live in infamy. At just over 2 months, the reign of Swerve in Our Glory would come to an end at Grand Slam at the hands of the Acclaimed. Despite tension, Swerve and Keith would continue to tag for a few more months until the inevitable split finally happened. Swerve crushing cinder blocks on Keith Lee's chest is something burned into my mind for whatever reason. Anyway, this was the start of Swerve as a true singles competitor. Now working as a heel, he'd form Mogul affiliates alongside Trench and Parker Boudreaux. This was a small speed bump in Swerve's journey as the two men he aligned himself with were awful, frankly. But a smart pivot by AEW ensured that Swerve got back on track to becoming a top heel in AEW in 2023. I'm glad that AEW saw that pairing up such a brilliant talent like Swerve alongside stinkers like Parker and Trench was only going to weigh him down. Meanwhile, legend of the industry Prince Nana had revived the embassy over on ROH with Brian Cage, Khan, and Toa Leona. It just seemed like a natural fit when Swerve announced that he was merging with Mogul affiliates with the embassy to form the Mogul Embassy. And this is where the magic truly began for Swerve Strickland. He began to be featured more prominently on AEW TV, racking up wins against guys like Wheeler Yuta and AR Fox. I would argue, however, that Swerve's momentum truly began to build at Double or Nothing 2023, where he was a part of the 21-man Battle Royal for the international title, where he made it all the way to the final two before being eliminated by Orange Cassidy. When fans began discussing who should be the one to end Orange Cassidy's legendary international title reign, Swerve was always amongst the top 3 names mentioned. AEW fans were ready to see Swerve thrive. He was quickly becoming a menacing character on TV who could stand toe-to-toe against anyone on the AEW roster, despite losing almost all of his big matches as a singles competitor up to this point. Despite having competitive matches against Orange Cassidy and Hiroshi Tanahashi, Swerve kept coming up short. For whatever reason, it wasn't keeping him down though. Over the course of the few following weeks, Swerve would pick up singles wins over Nick Wayne and Darby Allin, and would also welcome AR Fox into Mogul Embassy before quickly kicking him out a few weeks later. Personally, I'm still bummed about AR Fox being kicked out so soon after joining, but Swerve remained on course for big things. His renewed feud with Darby Allin saw him come to blows with Sting by association, and at All In front of a rabid Wembley crowd, Swerve teamed up with Christian Cage to take on Darby Allin and Sting in a coffin match. Having the massive crowd chant Swerve's house back at Swerve was the moment of vindication that he needed. Remember when you fired me? Well, look at me now. Sharing the ring with Sting at Wembley is a privilege all on its own, but Sting and Darby also made sure that Swerve looked like $1,000,000, despite a losing effort. A huge moment for sure, but that elusive career-defining win still escaped Swerve. He wouldn't have to wait much longer for it though, as after All In, we got Swerve coming face to face with the former AEW World Champion. The Wednesday following All Out, Hangman Page would be interrupted by an angry, a hungry Swerve Strickland. By this point, Prince Nana has become a phenomenon within his own right, with his dance anytime Swerve's music is playing. The moment Swerve's music hit, I knew this was it. This was his defining moment. Calling out Hangman for losing his spark, Swerve told the world that if he was in Hangman's spot getting his opportunities, he'd be the first black AEW World Champion. The best part about this story was that it rang true. Swerve was itching for an opportunity to become a made man, while Hangman had exhausted all of his. A former world champion versus a future world champion. In the lead up to this match, Swerve had failed to win any truly big matches as a singles competitor, but for some reason, I knew this would be the one. It says a lot about this feud that I can remember almost everything Swerve said, while I can only remember a few things that Hangman said. That's not to knock Hangman's ability. It's more so that Swerve made the most of his time and made it memorable. What's a buckshot to a kill shot in particular is a cold line. And so, in front of his hometown crowd, Swerve entered WrestleDream as the hero, while Hangman for the first time in his AEW career was unanimously treated as the villain. The funny part is, even though Seattle treated Swerve as the hero, this match solidified him as a top 3 villain currently in AEW. Swerve needed a huge performance here to prove that he belonged in the main event, to prove that he was worthy of being named alongside the likes of MJF, Kenny Omega, and Hangman. If you want to see a wrestler become a star in one match, I'd recommend you watch this one. The crowd elevated this to an astronomical level, and when Swerve finally got the pin, it wasn't just a win for him, but a win for his hometown audience who had supported him throughout the entire journey. One of their own had just become a star, and it happened in the only place it could have: home. Swerve's first major singles win in AEW, coming against the former world champion, made it worth the wait. He needed it now more than ever. There's been a few cases in AEW history where the promotion has failed to strike while the iron is hot, and so far I'm glad to say that Swerve isn't on that list. My concern about conservative booking is slowly dwindling as well, as Swerve's next match has been revealed to be against Bryan Danielson, where the winner will earn a shot at the TNT title. Whether he wins or loses, Swerve will be a world champion sooner rather than later. Despite losing his dream job, he's found himself thriving in a promotion who has put faith in him to be the person he wants to be. It's arguable that outside of Christian Cage, Swerve is the top heel in the promotion currently. He's not a cartoony villain either. He's in the mold of a menacing, conniving, calculated villain. He walks slowly down the ramp, creating an aura and a sense of urgency within his opponents. The crowd has come to accept him as a marquee villain in AEW. The irony of WWE firing him is that they'll surely come calling for him once his contract is up. But for now, Swerve is an AEW guy, and so long as he's there, he's destined for greatness. He's also spoken of the importance of crossing over his musical and cultural influence into wrestling. He wants to help push AEW to the next level, a future AEW World Champion in the making. In other words, Swerve just checks all of the boxes, and when you check all the boxes, you cash all the checks.